Hello and welcome to a conversation on the Daily Bern. I'm your host, Eric Miller, joined today by an awesome progressive from the great state of New York running for the state Senate seat in 55th District, Samra Brouk. How you doing, Samra?
I'm doing well, Eric. Thank you so much for having me on here.
Yeah, thanks for taking some time to chat with me. I had seen your campaign in progress and, you're doing wonderfully. You're running against, currently there's a Republican incumbent and there's another I guess Republican opponent this time around, but you of course are going to flip this seat in the New York State Senate. So you're endorsed by Bernie, Chuck Schumer, Kristen Gillibrand, Planned Parenthood, a bunch of unions, Moms Demand Action, Voter, AFL-CIO, UAW, food workers, teachers, nurses, all kinds of unions. My cat Brody has endorsed you.
Thanks, Brody.
Right? He might show up here at some point, but what is, we're less than a week away. What's the state of the race? How do you feel about it?
We feel good. Every time I have any question, I always go back to the people that we serve. And I think that right now, especially, we've had over 60,000 people vote between the two counties that I cover already. And what do we know? We know that when people vote, Democrats win. I mean, because I do believe there are more people who believe in progressive politics, who believe in human rights and civil liberties than don't. And so it's been really, really encouraging. We've actually, Tuesday during early voting, more people voted on a Tuesday this week in New York, at least in our county, than had come out on the weekend any single day. So I think it's just telling us that it's exciting that New York has created these new ways to vote. Last year was the first year we did early voting, but it's really showing that when you give people more chances, they're motivated, they'll go out and they'll do it and they'll make their voices heard. And I believe that the voices will say that we're sending a Democrat, Samra Brouk, to state Senate.
Oh, I love to hear that. Yeah, that's amazing. And, the debate, I guess the debate was maybe on Tuesday, the Voices of the Voter debate. And I'm going to put that in the comments here, so anyone wants to check that out. What was your takeaway from that? How did that feel? The debate.
Well, so I'm a full extrovert. I miss being around people and seeing them and hearing from them. So it was a little bit odd. I'd never been in studio during COVID. So, there are very few people there. It was just kind of us and that one camera, not even a camera person behind, just that one camera. So, what I was most proud of is that, especially in politics, folks will try to distract you from the real reason that you're running. And it's too important to be distracted. So I was proud that we were able to stick to our message and really deliver the message to voters, which is, we want to fight for healthcare. We want to fight for education. We want to make sure people aren't left behind when we have these economic recoveries. And we've got to be able to create more sustainable solutions against climate change. So that's what we talked about. And we didn't get off of that.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, you did talk about healthcare. I want to hit on a few of those things that you mentioned. You did talk about healthcare, and he does the normal attack it from the right position of, it's going to cost some exorbitant amount of money. And of course, right now, as if we're not currently paying the highest rates anywhere in the world, right? And I think you were directly asked if you supported single payer, and you said yes. Obviously, that makes the most sense, right? Can you talk about your position on healthcare and what that would mean? As I understand it, the New York State Senate is at a bit of a tipping point on that issue. Can you talk about if you were added to that, what that would ultimately mean?
Yeah, you said it correctly. It's definitely at a tipping point. And to answer your question of why and what I think our healthcare system should look like. The way I look at it is I'm an optimist, but I'm also a pragmatist. I've started businesses. I know what the bottom line is. I know what makes sense in terms of using our money effectively. So the way I look at it is here. I shared this story on the debate of my grandfather. He worked for 40 plus years, right, in the workforce. He's a basketball, softball coach in his community. He's like the unofficial mayor of his small town, which is in this district, which is so exciting. But yet I was having a conversation with him a few months ago where he said he was telling me, you know, maybe I don't need my heart medication because I can't make my heart medication and my car payment work. And he started talking me through this complicated process he has to go through and get to the end to realize this, you know, this doesn't work. I don't have enough money coming in to pay for the things that I desperately need to live. And then I think about myself. You could say I did everything right. You know, I went to the college, I got the nice degree that's sitting up in my office. I went and got the job, the well-paying job. And yet how many times have I avoided going to a doctor because the fee, I couldn't use the coverage I had, you know? Right. And so every room I go in, hundreds of people raise their hand to say, yes, I have coverage. I can barely afford my premium, but that means I can't actually afford the services when I need it, unless I get gravely ill, you know, and then I'm forced to. And then some people lose their homes. It's the number one reason for bankruptcy. And so to me, it's unconscionable to think that this is the norm and this is working.
Yeah.
I live in the middle class. It's not working, folks. And so it seems, you know, at this point, we've been talking about it for decades. Every advanced nation has figured this out except for us. Right. So hopefully the national level will figure it out. But in the absence of that, I think New York State can be a leader in actually showing what it means to take care of people.
Yeah. And am I right in understanding that there is a bit of a tipping point of, you know, it's a democratically controlled Senate, but, you know, there are more progressive candidates, you know, like Patrick Nelson and yourself that stand a chance to get in that could, you know, sort of tip over to, you know, state Medicare for all type of program. Am I?
I don't know where the votes stand on it, but I do know that in 2018, getting a majority was really important, getting progressive, real Democrats, not Democrats in name only. And then now we've got an opportunity to not just pick up 2 of these more seats to strengthen the majority, but to really bring Democrats who are we truly believe in democratic values. So I haven't done the math on it, but I will say we're probably in a much better position.
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
I want to pull up your district because, you know, districts tend to be gerrymandered in a ridiculous way. So, you know, I like to pull them up and show them and you know, bless you. And
just, your
no
cat.
worries. Yeah, right. It might have been Brody. But I also like to give candidates an opportunity to brag on their districts, right? I know you're a proud resident, like you talked about going to public school here, born and raised. Tell me what's awesome about 55.
Okay, first of all, one of the best things is that we have a little bit of everything. So I guess you can thank gerrymandering for that because we do have so much. So we do have some of the most beautiful parts of the city of Rochester, right down close to where I grew up myself, where you've got the Lilac Festival and Highland Park. We've also got some wonderful art institutions there and music venues for when we can do that again. So we do have the east side of the city of Rochester, which is wonderful. To the north, you've got Irondequoit, so you get Lake Ontario. So you've got some beaches and state parks up there. And then you go into the more suburban areas. And I think one of the most beautiful things there is we have this amazing Erie Canal path, which right now has become so popular because people are trying to social distance and stay outside and we can't gather. And so, so that's something that we've really enjoyed doing. And then you go all the way into the Finger Lakes. I mean, who doesn't love the Finger Lakes? Not only is it, you know, wine country, but it's also just so many trails. And I think that this is our season in Western New York, fall. Before it gets frigid, cold, and snowy, the foliage is just unreal. And it's one of the things when I lived abroad in other places, I always came back for fall because I've never seen it so beautiful. So it's nice. There's a lot of diversity to what we have.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, thanks. I like to give people the opportunity to do that. And while I'm here, let me pull up your website because you could use some volunteers. We're in the home stretch, but, you know, we can certainly donate. You know, you're a grassroots funded campaign. So, you know, $10, $20, $100, whatever you can do would make a difference, right? And I've been saying, I don't mean to target, you know, Jamie Harrison, but or Amy McGrath, but they have enough money. You don't need to send them another $20. Send your $20 to Samra. It'll go much further in a race like this, right? So, you know, and particularly volunteer. If you can jump on the phones, text bank, I'm sure you have all of that set up. So it's samraforsenate.com, and I'll mention that a few more times as we go. You mentioned about living abroad, and there was one thing in your bio that I thought was really interesting, and I wanted to ask you about it. Was your Peace Corps experience in Guatemala. I think you said you were there for 2 years.
Yeah.
What did that teach you? Like, I'm sure you could talk about that all day long, but like, what it sounds wonderful and amazing, and what did you learn from that?
Yeah, and you're right. I could talk about it for hours. I will say it is still one of the most formative experiences of my lifetime. I mean, truly, 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 a week does not go by where my perspective has been shifted on an issue or a decision based on my experience working in rural Guatemala. But, more than anything, what I really learned going there, again, as this, whippersnapper college grad ready to save the world, you realize you really know nothing. I mean, what you learn is the power of listening to a community and building trust. And that is something that has really helped me throughout my career and something that I try to do every day on this campaign trail. But, for the first few months of being in Guatemala, I was just talking to people, just going over, getting cafecito, which is you just go over and get some coffee and a snack with people, going to their restaurants, visiting their stores, just getting to know them, getting to learn the culture, getting to understand what their actual needs are, so that I can be the vessel for that change versus, me coming in assuming I understand what any community needs. And, obviously working in an indigenous village in Guatemala is very different than my upbringing. And yet we found so many things just in common and found things that we could work together for. And I literally do that right now. I visit people on their home turf in their communities, and I need to learn from them. And so I think that's why we've been successful so far, is that I show up ready to learn and ready to listen.
Yeah, that's really great. I'd love to talk to you about that infinitely. I feel remiss that I didn't take an opportunity like that. A short while ago, AOC was on Cornel West's show, and she talked about, she traveled somewhere, Central America, I think, and she served as a midwife, and she recounted these amazing tales. And I pay attention to her biography and whatever. I never knew that. And, I'm sure you have experiences that were just enlightening for the rest of your life. It's an amazing thing. We actually have a question from one of our viewers, if you don't mind, someone asking about how is voter suppression in New York City? Do you have any firsthand experience or witnessing any issue with polling places or anything like that? Are you seeing or hearing anything like that in your district?
So we are in Western New York, so not the city, but so far, I do think people have been getting out. We are definitely keeping an eye on it, especially because what we're concerned about is some of the national rhetoric going around how to, I won't even repeat what he says. It's not worth it. But the things that the president has tried to enlist around voting, we're really being vigilant here. We've got folks making sure that there is no intimidation, suppression. But I will be honest, this is only the second year that New York State has had early voting. So if we think about it, in 2019, it was an off-year election for us here in Monroe County, but we were electing our county executive, which, by the way, especially before COVID, that was the number one most important person to make sure that Monroe County was taken care of during COVID. And so we had a major election, did end up electing a Democrat for the first time in 30 years, but we only had 6 early voting locations in Monroe County. So we made a big fuss about that last year. And so this year, I'm happy to say we have 12. But still, that's not enough. I mean, you want to talk about the lines that we've seen. I was out today in the rain on a Wednesday, and it was in a mall where we've got a voting session, vote polling place. The line was snaking all out the door into the parking lot, folks waiting in the rain. So to me, the lines are exciting because it means people want to vote. It also tells me that when you make voting easy, more people will do it, which means we have to plan for that. So next year, can we double it, right? And let's do 24 or, elongate the hours. So that's what we're working with here. In New York City, I think it's been a little tougher. They've had to make very specific changes in the moment to make sure people can vote. But
yeah, or make it a holiday, right?
Hey, there's a novel idea.
Imagine that. Imagine that,
Yeah.
right? I pulled up the district, and obviously, recent headlines. There are far too many, unarmed, men of color getting murdered by police, and uh, no one is immune to it. There was a high-profile one in your district in Rochester, Daniel Prude, and God, it's so terrible that we even have to describe which one. So this was the one. He was intoxicated, having a bit of an issue, a crisis, right? Mental health crisis. And he was nude, and they put a bag over his head, and it's a prolonged video and horrific, and suffice it to say, they murdered him, right? And it's currently under investigation. I think at the state level, and I think your Rochester mayor is kind of in a holding pattern to what that reveals. If I know the state of the case, but there were a lot of protests, really, powerful protests. People nude with bags, sitting on City Hall steps. What did that look like on the front lines? Has anything changed? Like, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah. It's an absolute tragedy. And to be honest with you, our city and our community are still reeling from this. And one of the most amazing things I think that has happened is I think it was really a wake-up call for a lot of people in our communities. While this happened in the city of Rochester, and if I'm successful, I'll have the honor of representing about half of the city. And so, and then there's another 2 districts that take the rest of the city. But, one of the things that really moved me when I showed up to one of the first vigils was I was greeted. The first people I saw was this huge group of supporters that I knew from the suburban communities. From where I went to school. So I know a lot of folks in the suburbs, and my parents are out there, and it was all those folks. And I said, I've never seen you out here, and they said, well, we had to do something. And just, it's too much, whether it's that people are paying more attention because we have fewer things to do, or maybe we've come to a moment where people have realized, I want to choose the right side of history, and I choose humanity, and I choose equal rights, and I choose compassion. And so that is the one thing that I think I'm proud of a lot of folks here who have understood that they do have a place in creating this change. But the truth is, we shouldn't have to keep having these conversations. I mean, we have had folks out almost every weekend since George Floyd was tragically killed in May. And this has only, I think, given folks more energy and encouragement to say, this is it. We can't have another conversation like this. We're tired of having these conversations. And so, from a state level, a lot of the incoming, we have a whole new delegation this year. A lot of us have been meeting even before taking office. And we've been talking about how do we support our community at a state level. So just look at how long it took for this chokehold to become illegal after we saw Eric Garner lose his life. Let's not wait that long this time. And so I think that at a state level, to go back to what you were talking about, Eric, getting more actual Democrats, actual progressives who believe that when a community is hurting and traumatized, it matters, and that Black lives matter, and that we have to act accordingly. And so I think with more folks understanding that, hopefully it doesn't take as long to say, listen, what happened here can't happen again. What legislation do we put into place as leaders to support these communities, and then make sure that it's actually carried out?
Yeah, that's the most critical part. I think, if I remember correctly, I think the chokehold was banned before Eric Garner. I don't think that came after. I think that was before, if I remember correctly. But yeah,
New York City, yeah. And I want to make sure all this gets codified at the state level so that we don't have to. But you're right. And then making sure that people are accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. How about that sort of police accountability, but obviously there's the systemic racism component to that, which, I read in your bio that your husband works in, I forget the terminology, in court,
Involved youth. Yep.
That's it. So that made me think about just the general problem of school to prison pipeline. Is that something in Rochester? or something that you would work on at a statewide level, and how so?
Oh, absolutely. I think this is what I learned from my husband. By the way, his first day of work was our first date. So I've learned alongside of him as he's been in this work for, 7 years. So I think the thing that I always go back to is you always get to the root of the issues. And one of the things that we really need to do a better job of is restorative justice, and to think about why students are acting the way they're acting in a classroom or in a school. And we've got to understand that we have these aren't academic institutions anymore. These are community institutions, because kids come in, especially here in Rochester, we have a lot of concentrated poverty. So you have kids who maybe don't have a full belly. You have kids who have, violence in the home. You have kids that come in with trauma just from living in some of our communities, and what they go through, from their front door to the school's front door. Their lives look very different based on each individual experience. And so my mother was an educator, is the retired teacher now, and I've seen her be able to, she worked actually with special ed oftentimes too, and she dealt with kids who bring a lot with them, and she had to be able to meet them where they were and actually be able to treat the whole child and teach the whole child to help them be successful. And so I know that our educators are committed to our young people, but we need to be able to give them the resources and support they need to be there for our children holistically. That means if a child is acting out, you find out why. You don't expel them to put them directly into the school to prison pipeline, because our goal has to be for K through 12, we need graduates. And that's straight from my husband and all the work that he does. But you look at all the statistics, if you can get someone to graduate from high school, their likelihood of entering the carceral system at all plummets. And so we've got to be able to actually invest in programs like that, rather than just these punitive programs for young people, which don't, by the way, stats are in, folks. It's not working, right? We're not creating some best in class, generations. We've got to do better.
Yeah. How about on the education side? You're talking about investing in public education. How about on the teacher side of it? Obviously you're endorsed by Teachers Union. Talk about how you have their backs, how you're going to advocate for them, maybe around pay and teacher worker rights and so forth.
I mean, so from my conversations with our local teachers and from, being shoulder to shoulder with them when times get tough, we just have to fund our public schools. I mean, you've got teachers out there, they are on the front lines with our students. And what you hear again and again and again is like, I have twice the number of kids this year because we can't afford to bring any more teachers. I'm getting laid off in the middle of the year. We don't have counselors to step in, so that we're asking, one third grade teacher to take care of everything. And now there's 50 students instead of 20. And the number one thing, especially here in the 55th district, where they were owed over $100 million in funding, the number one thing is we have to have our state understand the importance of public education and actually deliver on our constitutional promise of a sound basic education, because right now we're just abdicating that duty. It's just not, our students are not getting what they deserve.
Right. Is there a battle line between public education and charter schools and vouchers and so forth in your district? That's common everywhere to lesser or more extent. Is that a frontline issue for you in your district?
In our district, most folks are in public school. So we, just as any area, have private schools. We do have some charter schools. But, having studied this issue, what we've seen generally is sustained adequate funding to public schools. You have phenomenal public schools. We look at that in a lot of our suburban communities. Where I graduated, I was lucky to graduate from a very well-funded school when I went, and we know that it works. So that is the thing that we have proven. When we actually adequately and have sustainable funding in these schools and treat students with respect and compassion and restorative justice, you go off and you're successful. And so I think that is what we need to invest more in. So that's really the focus here in this district. And it's not quite as tense maybe, or as big of an issue, I think, as some other areas.
Good. Another thing that you worked on historically, and it's mentioned on your platform again, SamraForSenate.com. Go donate, go volunteer. Right, we're in the home stretch. He needs all of our help. Is taking care of our aging community. And you had previously started an organization called Umbrella, which so that tells me that that is a personal thing that you are, inspired to work on. Can you talk about what that means, taking care of our aging community?
Absolutely. So I was a founding member of a company called Umbrella, where we basically tried to make sure that seniors got the services they need in their homes. So oftentimes aging in place is something that a lot of seniors want to do, which means literally, as it sounds, aging in your home, in the place that you call home, where you're comfortable. And a lot of times, because lots of young people, especially here in Western New York, that don't find opportunity, you leave. You go to find jobs in different cities, and seniors are often left without that kind of family support that traditionally they've often had. And so we wanted to make sure that you had everything you needed around the home, whether it's raking leaves or, doling out, helping you cook, like whatever it is, to make sure that you can stay at home and be safe. And so doing that work and talking to seniors and communities, it became blatantly clear to me that it's almost as though no one expects to age. Because if we all thought about what it meant to be 85 years old after having worked for 40, 50 years, more than that probably, if we thought about that, I'll tell you what, our laws would not look, our systems would not look the way they look. To go back to the story about my grandfather, no one expects to just not have money for medication, because as we age, we need more health support. No one would expect that all of a sudden you wouldn't be able to afford it. And in fact, most low and middle income seniors will eventually run out of money to be able to take care of themselves appropriately. And so that really gave me a jolt to say, we've got to look at these things, because we're all going to age. If we're lucky, we're all going to get old and get to, stay in our homes and all of this. And we've got to be able to support them. So for me here, it's looking through that lens of how will this help our elderly? So things like rural broadband is huge here, especially in the rural part, to make sure that they can get to their virtual healthcare appointments. Community clinics, making sure they're accessible for healthcare purposes. There's a lot that we can do to make sure that our seniors are taken care of, because certainly they deserve that.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. And I love your framing on that. Again, one thing that you raised in the debate, and I posted the link, so go check that out afterwards, is, about a more fair tax policy, right? So, taxing the handful of 1%, more appropriately to fund programs like you're talking about. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and this one's quite simple. It's that, rather than protecting the shareholdings of 120 billionaires, I do think that now is the time that we shift to more progressive and fairer structures that allow us to do the things that will literally save lives. I mean, to me at this point, folks, you get to decide who you are. Decide who you are right now. We are in the middle of a global health pandemic, and people have lost their lives because they don't have adequate access to healthcare. They've lost their lives because they don't have housing that is affordable, that they can stay safe in. I mean, at this point, it's unconscionable to say that you want to protect wealth. Little bit, and this is what I said in the debate too, it's a little bit, you won't feel it. You're a billionaire. You won't feel it, I promise. And just to give a little bit to make it more equitable, because everyone here, the working families here in the 55th, they've done everything right. They show up, they pay their taxes. And when I tell people that they pay exorbitantly more proportionally than these 120 individuals, they kind of get a little irked. And so now it's my job to go make sure that these folks, pony up.
And and just speaking directly to these policies, right? You're someone who has healthcare or, the morally wrong, or be mine or for donors or whatever, right? Samra, obviously, election day is November 3rd. Early voting has started. It looks like you're having some connection issues, so I'm going to kind of wrap up. Thank you for taking some time to, again, donate, volunteer if you can. Races like this, it makes a huge difference. Every little bit we can do forward.
Today, I'll tell you how I got here and why I'm committed to making the 55th the best possible place to live for all of our families. I was born right here in Rochester. This community has shaped me, and it has taught me compassion, humility, and service. From a young age, my parents instilled in me the importance of serving others. I learned the value of using what you have, however much or little, to improve your community and lift up those around you. My mother was a public school teacher, and my father a civil engineer who fled his home country of Ethiopia during a civil war and found a supportive network here in Western New York to call home. When decisions are being made about the future of our Rochester City schools and suburban schools, let's put someone in the room who has attended our city and suburban schools. I am proud of the work I've done to promote positive change. I will bring the same work ethic I've brought to every organization, every company, and every cause I've worked with to this campaign. No one will outwork us. This race isn't about one issue, and it's not about one person. It's about all of us working together to address the myriad obstacles we're facing every day. I'm running because I know representation in government matters. I was born right here in the community. The decisions made in Albany can either help the Rochester area or they can keep us from moving forward. The 55th Senate District deserves leadership that is courageous, optimistic, hardworking, and hopeful. My name is Samra Brouk, and I'm running to be your state senator in the 55th District.